Yeah, so actually, that's a good question. And before I was in the IT industry, when I was growing up, uh, my father was an entrepreneur, and he was kind of an entrepreneur on steroids, in the sense that he must have started, bankrupted, sold, and grown at least 15 different businesses and 15 different industries over his career. And and the common theme in all his businesses was that they all started with pretty much zero capital. He was bankrupt, personally bankrupt many times in his life. And many times I saw him restart with nothing in completely new industries. And and of course, from the age of like 13 or so, uh, my brother and I were like his de facto board of directors. So he really didn't have anyone else to talk to. But when these businesses were in serious trouble, he used to sit down with us with the numbers, and we had to try to figure out how to get past the next day, how to keep the business alive for one more day. And then we'd get past the one day and again sit down in the evening to try to figure out how do we get past one more day. And after I was about 16 or 17 years old, um, many times when he traveled, my brother and I used to actually run the operation and such. Um, so I felt like I didn't realize it at the time, but later when I started working, I realized that I had finished many MBAs before I was 18, and it was just by accident. That's the way it happened. And so today, when I'm running the funds and doing what I do, I think the experience I had during my teenage years was probably the most important in terms of giving me the skills that I use in the business today. And in fact, the human brain actually is ideally set up to specialize during our teenage years. It is actually optimized to go into a particular field from the age of like 13 or 14 till about 18 or 19. And of course, what happens in the way education systems in the US and almost anywhere else in the world are set up is in that age band, we are forced to become generalists. Uh, the education system does not encourage specialization during that period. And when you look at some humans like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett bought his first stock when he was 11, and he had run a number of different businesses as a teenager, pretty significant size businesses. And and by the time he was 18 or 19, he had made all these stock investments, run all these businesses, and probably spent more than 10 or 15,000 hours on them. And the same with Bill Gates. He used to sneak out of his parents' home at night when he was in high school, and he would go to the one computer in in the high school that he was in, Lakeside, and he would work on it till about 5 in the morning, and then he would sneak back into bed and go back to school the next day. And he did that through his teen years. And of course, by the time Gates was 19 or 20, he probably had 15,000 hours of programming experience, which hardly anyone who was even 10 years older than him had at that time. And it gave him. So the thing is that it was not only the number of hours of experience that the Gates and Buffetts and Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo and all these guys had at that time. It's that intense activity took place during that window of time when the brain is specializing. And so if you try to do the same thing in your 20s or 30s, the brain is past the time that it is optimized to specializing. And so one of the things I think, and in fact, one of the interesting things I feel is that when you look at the country like Germany, it's interesting that Germany does really well even in manufacturing when it has one of the highest labor costs on the planet. And the reason is that the German school system start segregating kids into different tracks when they're like 11 or 12 years old. And so if you're going to go into a track which is going to be manufacturing, vocational, and that sort of thing, then you will, besides going to school, you'll start working in a factory at the age of 13 or 14. And if you're going to be going on to become a mathematician or something, then you're going to be, in a different kind of magnet school and that sort of structure. So they start segregating the kids. And so actually German manufacturing, I think, is exceptional, because those people who are, running those manufacturing shops and managing those started when they were 12 or 13 on the shop floor. And so the country is probably one of the best in the world at, high-end, high-tech manufacturing, high-precision manufacturing, high-value-add manufacturing, and all of that. And quite frankly, they've been unaffected by low-cost competition from China and such. And so to the extent that we can learn, I think the one thing we can learn in terms of hopefully in the US system, is to maybe try to see if middle schools and high schools can be changed so that in those periods of time, we start identifying kids who are clearly showing, directions in where they are likely to be headed. Not everyone will show that, but I think the ones that show that, I think the education system needs to be set up to allow that. And so I actually got there by accident because of my dad. I think Gates and Buffett, I think, also got there by accident because they just had this interest and pursued it. And I think that they probably had no understanding that their brains were optimized to do what they were doing at that age. And so that's a huge advantage.